Horror. It's an iconic pillar of gaming, and it's tasked with making grown men with webcams and microphones scream bloody murder, and making 7-year-olds tear away at FNAF horror like it's crack. But I don't think I'm the only one who feels as though horror games have become stale and forgotten to some degree. Now, I don't necessarily think that horror is dead, but the kind of horror games that are being made today just don't hit the same.
What's that? It's Squidward. What's he doing here? Here lie Squidward's hopes and dreams. What a baby.
For every horror game that comes out now, it's either a Resident Evil with Leon, Where Did Everyone Go, Bingo, Kennedy, or a asymmetric PvP game where about the only thing scary about them is the smell of the gamer who plays them, and Phasmophobia clones. My god, the amount of Phasmophobia clones. Like, Jesus. It's God. But regardless of all that, it's in times like these where the industry seems stale that I think about the golden childs that made the industry what it is. And for horror games, that's Amnesia the Dark Descent. When Frictional Games came out with the Dark Descent around 2010, really, my god, it was that long ago? Jeez. It was groundbreaking. It was one of the first games to take survival horror and make the player defenseless. It had everything: an amazing atmosphere, simple but engaging gameplay, an insanity system that actively pushed the player into scary situations, and a really good storyline that was gripping and sinister down to the end. It was a masterclass in horror and game design. It was so good that for nearly a decade after, there were so many games that tried to copy the formula that started with this game. Games like Alien Isolation, Outlast, and even Frictional Games' Soma, to a degree. But even then, it seems no one really took in the lessons that made the first Amnesia good. Every developer saw the scary atmosphere in the defenseless player, and the big, scary 3D model that chases you, and said, that's what makes Amnesia great. Hell, even Frictional Games, the creators of Amnesia, didn't even learn that lesson. So, for over a decade to today, horror games became walking simulators with jump scares and the occasional Lego game puzzle that still took my brain ride itself too long to figure out. It seemed horror games would never get that chance again to be both great horror and great games. That was until December of 2022. Frictional Games announced a new Amnesia game, and to say that the trailer slapped was an understatement. Finally, on June 6, 2023, we got Amnesia the Bunker, and Frictional Games released a goddamn horror masterpiece. Finally, a horror game that blends the horror atmosphere with great gameplay that pushes the player into thrilling situations. Every lesson that Amnesia the Dark Descent taught was taken into this game. This game, in my opinion, is the true successor to the original, and I hope that in the future, horror games will try to emulate what this game does, but we can only hope. So, what about the actual game? I mean, this is the whole point of the video, to review the game. So, what is my opinion on every aspect of this game? Well, the game is single-handedly the most tense and atmospheric horror game I've played since Alien Isolation. But past the first hour of the game, it ceases being scary to being more tense than anything. I don't think that's necessarily the game's fault. It's just the nature of being a horror game where you have somewhat of an ability to defend yourself works relatively well. And I think that's a good segue into the gameplay. Now, in the bunker, you play as Henry, a French soldier in World War One who wakes up with amnesia. The name of the game. In a bunker on the front lines of the war. It is dark and there seems to be nobody around. You walk around until you find a closet with a pull start flashlight that lights up the area in front of you. Go figure. It is where we get our first aspect of the horror gameplay. Uh, Even though you are in a safe area, the flashlight does not stay on indefinitely and can keep charge about as well as a Samsung phone after a year of updates. You can keep charge by pulling on the string to make the flashlight go, but it makes more noise that attracts the monster straight to you. With that, we find our way into the big room where we meet one of the few friendly NPCs in the entirety of the game. He is mortally wounded and wants us to kill him with his own gun. He tells us to go get the bullets in a nearby room, and this is where we get the first encounter with the monster. And in an amazing play of set pieces and expectation, the monster grabs the poor man and takes him into God knows what hell. The only thing we can do now is use the pistol to open the door that was previously locked. And in this, we enter the most important room in the game. The save room, which sits at the center of the entirety of the bunker, where we can save and access chest inventory, and sweet lord, my baby, my first and only loved generator. The generator is really where the game shines. Now, obviously, the generator serves as the sole power source for the entire facility, and because of that, you need to make sure that it's fueled. Because to go without power means you'll stumble around like you're blind and you need stick and braille. It also means that the monster can come out at any time and at will. Simply running out of power means that the game gets harder and more tense. The power also allows you to access certain areas around the map. To keep the generator fueled, you must find gas canisters around the map randomly spawned, or later on, you find bottled fuel. And that brings me to the second element of the game, and that is finding items. Now, besides key items used for progression, almost all the items are randomized. Every playthrough is a little unique, as you must explore and experiment in order to gain items that you can use to help you survive just an extra 5 more minutes. The game also has a great physics system that actually affects how you interact with the game. You can use explosives to break doors, or you can throw bottles and meat to lure rats and the monster. You could use chairs to block paths from the monster temporarily, and many more things that promote creativity out of fear. And the monster really adds to this. It creates a sense of urgency that forces you to think about him at all times, which brings us to the monster. He's a nice guy. He is a sweetheart who only wants to be friends with you. I mean, look at him. Isn't he precious? Now, the monster is the one thing that I feel has not changed very much from previous games. I mean, he still is just a stalker enemy who is invincible at all times. He's just waiting for you to crank that flashlight one too many times so he can pop out and get you. The thing that changes is your ability to defend yourself from him. The gun is a multi-tool workhorse that's used for many things, and it adds to the sandbox of this game. It's a key, a fuse starter, and most importantly, it's a get-out-of-jail-free card. With the gun, you can shoot the monster to scare him into running back into his dilapidated neighborhood called Section 8, where he sells illegal narcotics to his own people. He only uses cash for financial purposes, too. There is a limited ammo for the gun, making every bullet feel like losing one of your own children. You also don't have as much inventory to store items, so you have to make hard decisions to keep or leave items for later. In my case, promise myself for sure you're gonna need that grenade for when you really need it. Lastly, there are rats, and all my homies hate the fucking rats. Rats serve as some really annoying barrier blocking to your progression, and I mean, that's unless you don't mind getting your ass eaten harder than a pig for breakfast. You have to craft torches to scare them. The gameplay is really good at keeping the intensity up while making you actually think and plan ahead of how you really need to progress, which I know for you is super easy because you're watching this video made by me, which speaks volume to your brain capacity. But the game does cease being scary in the end, which I think is natural for a game where trial and error is encouraged. The story of the bunker is not told to you directly. Much of it is implied and told through notes and environmental details. If one is not paying attention, you could easily miss the heavy Lovecraftian tone and setting. The story begins in a battle for Verdun during World War I on the French front. It was the only war where the French contributed anything meaningful. We play as Henry Clement in this sequence, navigating the trenches in the war to find our friend Lambert. We find him in a giant crater where we make him drink from a puddle on the ground in World War I, in a crater that we originally assumed to be from an artillery something. Yes, that's exactly what I would do. We try to get Lambert to safety, but are caught in an explosion and pass out. Henry wakes up in the bed, and that's where the game starts. From here on, the story is taken directly from notes, images, and environmental details rather than dialogue sequences like in the first game. Now, this is mostly subjective, but I feel like the story being told through dialogue and memories that Daniel was having had way more impact on me. There was a little part of me wishing that there was something more like that in the bunker, but what we got, I think, is serviceable. Henry finds out that he's locked in the bunker because of the officers who turned tail and ran before they blew up the exit to seal the monster in the bunker. The basic plot now is to find dynamite and detonator to handle to escape. As discussed earlier, is tons of environmental detail, and one of the biggest found is in the prison, where upon entering you will find the only other human being still locked down here with you, a German prisoner. And he's still blindfolded and locked in a cell here. He's been safe from the monster this entire time. Henry needs to get the bolt cutters from him inside of his cell, and this is where the first major decision you can make in this game. You can open up the cell and use the man as bait for the monster, which can easily be justified for the means of survival. And we are in wartime, and he is the enemy, so there's not much to think about. But when we do actually think about it, we as soldiers were clearly torturing this man, and he was left here to suffer a fate worse than death. Even if he is an enemy soldier, he's still a human, and down here with the horrors of the unknown, flags and countries really don't matter. It wants to kill you either way. So, as Henry, we can go the extra mile to save this man. I really think it does a good job of highlighting the themes of the war going on outside. At the end of the day, the Germans and Henry are just humans trying to survive the hell that they were unwillingly placed into, whether that be a war fought for governments or trapped in a bunker with a giant deadly stalker enemy. When Henry gets the detonator handle, we find some strange ruins that house the other human, but this one is less of a friendly face we want to see, and more a batshit insane person trying to kill you. I think it's about time we explain the Lovecraftian angle of this game. The ruins were discovered by the soldiers before the start of the game. They started excavating the site out of curiosity, but as they did this, many of the soldiers got hallucinations of ritual torture and evil beings with unexplainable structures.
As a horse. None of this is a secret. To be clear,
Many of them went insane and tried to destroy the site, and this led to the tunnels being sealed. If you played previous games, you'll realize that this site is connected to the other world as seen in Rebirth. It is a world that is home to an ancient and extraterrestrial society. This society is reliant on a substance called vitae, which is extracted when you torture a human and cause them immeasurable pain. This explains the visions of ritual torture that bring us full circle to the Dark Descent, with Alexander and Daniel using it to get Alexander home to another world. But what is also interesting is that we find out later that the pool that Henry made Lambert drink out of was connected to this temple. And because the temple is connected to the other world, it has special properties. We see this in the notes that Lambert was not killed in that explosion earlier in the game, but survived and brought Henry back to the bunker alive. He then started going insane and transformed into the monster that has been hunting us the entire game. So, in a way, Henry was responsible for the horrors in the bunker. We can find a doll near the crater that Lambert drank from, and it turns out it's Lambert's doll that was meant to be a gift for his son. We can use this later on in the final showdown. Henry leaves the ruins and heads to the exit, depending on if you got the dynamite from the arsenal first. When we explode the tunnels, we open to see the site that got buried by the soldiers, and it's breathtaking. But we're not alone, and we get face to face with Lambert. Here we get to decide to run past to the exit where we get one ending, or we can use the doll to distract Lambert where he picks it up and looks at it, showing that not all of his humanity has been completely drained. We can then destroy the bridge beneath and kill him once and for all. We can then escape freely, and depending on which decision we made, we can get two endings. One where we escape, but Lambert does too. He runs off into the middle of the battle to do God knows what, and maybe blackjack and hookers, who knows. Or we escape with no monster. In both ending, we hear Germans coming from the distance, where Henry's fate is unknown. We exit out of one hell to make it right back into another. What I think frictional games did here is make a horror experience that didn't compromise on gameplay for story, and vice versa. Now, where the horror elements that are there don't stay scary for long, they do hold their tension really well, making you not want to get caught. Even if it isn't necessarily scary, the element of the time limit and the random item and code spawns really make a playthrough unique, because where the story and the key items stay the same, the way you navigate and solve puzzles does not. There was a moment in the game where I was stuck in the darkness in a fuel room, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the furthest point you can be from this save point. I had one bullet and no idea where I was. I slowly moved around as I heard the monster crawling in the walls, waiting for me to make a single sound, a single mistake. I found a door and I knew I could escape, but it was locked. I could use that bullet that I had and escape now, but then the monster would surely hear me, and I would have no way to defend myself. So I looked around some more, and I found an explosive barrel, so I rolled it down the stairs to the door. Now I couldn't shoot it, but I could craft a Molotov to set it on fire. I would have to use one of the bottles of fuel and that would leave me out of some fuel to use for the generator when I got back. But, I risked it anyways. I threw the bottle, exploding the barrel, and hid. The monster came out looking for my hot ass and didn't leave for a while. But I was patient, and I was not going to be set back a save. When he left, I booked it and ran till I made it back. That was the most tense I've ever been in a game, and I honestly think that's the magic of this game. The horror isn't the scary monster trying to kill you. It's that coming back alive, but with less stuff than before. Sure, you lived, but you only bought yourself in 15 extra minutes. Those minutes you'll have to use wisely. Every aspect of this game is a puzzle, and I love it. Instead of getting to a room and having to solve a puzzle a specific way, the entire bunker is a puzzle. There's no specific item you need to solve it, mostly. You just have to make do with what you have, and while being hunted and having a time limit. Amnesia Bunker gives me hope that horror games can be more than just cash grabs from the Steam store or a walking simulator that is only as tense as you want to be immersed in it. I think frictional games have showed that they know how to make a pretty damn horror game. Now, with that being said, it's still not the scariest game of 2023. That honor belongs to Gollum.
Movies.